Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 1st, 2024 Design Review Board meeting. First up on this evening's agenda is roll call.
Board Member Malat. Board Member O'Dorisio.
Here.
Vice Chair Rosner.
Here.
Chair Chung.
Here. Thank you.
Chair Kim is, or Board Member Kim is absent.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda for this evening is oral communications for anyone that is here to address an item that is not on this evening's agenda. You're welcome to come forward. Again, this is for items not on this evening's agenda. We'll also go to the Zoom call to see if there's anyone in the Zoom room that has an item that's not for this evening. Please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen and we'll let you in.
Chair Chung, there is nobody with the hand raised.
All right, thank you very much. Moving right along to staff briefing.
I have nothing this evening, Chair.
All right, thank you. And now we move to the minutes from the July 18th, 2024 meeting. Is there any comments or adjustments to those minutes? All right, seeing none, could we get a motion to adopt those minutes?
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. And with that, we adopt the minutes from July 18th. Moving on to the consent calendar. The first item on this, the only item on this evening's consent calendar is 1830 Straitsview Drive. The adoption of the resolution denying the appeal of the conditional approval.
If I may, Chair, we had a full quorum last time when this was voted upon. We do not have the same quorum tonight, and we'll need to continue this item
All right.
to the next meeting is what I would suggest.
And what meeting, what's the date of the next meeting?
August 15th.
August 15th. Can we get a motion to continue this item to the August 15th meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
and all those in favor of continuing this item?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. And with that, we move that item to August 15th, which leads us to this evening's two public hearings. The first public hearing is 127 Leland Way. If we could have the applicant come forward, you'll have up to 20 minutes to present, at which point we might ask you some questions. We'll also open it up to the public for any comments they might have. And then we will provide the applicant an opportunity to come back and address any of the concerns that were raised.
We'll just go ahead and start.
Go ahead and start. Yep.
My name is Jeff Gottesman and I live at 127 Leland Way.
Can you speak in the mic? If you need to bring it closer, that's fine, but we want to make sure it's on a recording. Thank you.
Sure. So we're at 127 Leland Way and just a little background. We purchased the house in September 23. We moved into the house in December. And there was an open issue with the fence. At the time, it was my understanding that we were waiting to hear from the town to see if there was anything to do or whether the variance would be granted and the case closed. There was some miscommunications and there was a contract employee, I believe by the name of Ranu, that promised to get back to our neighbor who was handling it at the time. And we never heard from him. And then we got some mail forwarded to us that there was still an open issue. And so then we started dealing with it then. This was toward the end of the year. It took a while to figure out what all the paperwork is, and Savannah helped us with that. And we recently completed all the necessary paperwork and tried to address all the requirements. So the fence in question was built in 2020. And then I'll try to go through the required, the findings and talk about each item. My first point is about the self-created hardship that we inherited the problem. I know technically It's I mean, we inherited the problem, but technically it's a self-created hardship. Okay, so the first item, kind of addressing, I believe it's attachment number 4, PH1 attachment 4. When I mentioned that our houses are very close together, they're a neighbor, about 5 feet, between 5 and 6 feet that I can measure from Google Earth from roof line to roof line. Our house is 5/8 inches from the fence, and our neighbors at 121 Leland, where we share that fence, have about that same measurement. On both sides of the house, we have bathrooms, bedrooms, a music room, and offices, and they're directly across from each other. So we're very, very close. And right now, without these rooms are out of sight because of those few extra inches of height. And I have a note here, page 18, figure 1. It's not just a garage over there. So the yard itself is, although flat, slopes from the rear towards the front. And the fence was built so the top follows the roof lines. And that explains why in the back it's 6 feet, and then it gradually increases to the maximum of 6'9", more toward the front of the house. And I also want to mention that at the very front of the house, the gate and a good section, I believe about a 6-foot section of the fence is 6 feet, but then it steps up. And I think you can see that in the photo. Maybe the next page, yeah, so you can see it there where actually it was the previous one. You can see it a little better, the previous page. So there it steps up a few inches, and that's the maximum height comes out to 6 foot 9.5 inches. And I've measured all the heights along the fence at each post, and I've included that, but the maximum is toward the front is 6 foot 9.5 inches, and it gradually decreases to like a little over 6 feet in the back, and it averages out to 5 inches over code. So okay, and number 2, and they're addressing number 2 in the required findings about the fence. Fence is really not out of the character for the neighborhood. Casual unscientific walk through the neighborhood shows many other fences that are probably over the 6-foot limit, without going into details and pointing anything out. But so therefore, about the term special privilege, I don't consider it a special privilege, since it's so incrementally close to 6 feet. And I don't know whether every house is built so close to the edge of the property line, but ours is very close. And number 3, again, technically a self-created hardship, but we inherited this problem when we bought the house. We knowingly inherited, we were told, but I didn't think we'd end up here. So I also want to mention in number 4 that I don't think there's anything detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other properties. And I also want to point out that we've got like 6 letters of support from neighbors that we get the variance granted. And I might also point out the new fence looks a lot better than the old one. The old fence, and there's a picture of it. I think it's like the first photo. That's the old one. I never saw this. This was, a few years ago, but there's a lot of height there. I believe 14 feet if you include the hedges along there. So the new fence that you can see in one of the other photos is actually quite nice, and we'd like to leave it that way. And we really don't want to plant the ivy. It attracts rats and et cetera, et cetera. One of the letters that we have is from the Cahills. They're on the other side of the fence and they support the variance. And to bring it down to 6 feet will be expensive, a couple $1,000s. And I'm hoping that you respectfully request that you give us a positive response granting us this variance. And that's all I'm going to say so far.
All right, thank you. We will open it up to the public. First of all, any questions of the applicant?
Is your neighbor here tonight?
Yes,
On the other side of the fence, I mean,
yes, our neighbor is here.
That's me.
Okay,
you'll be speaking? Thank you. Thank you.
Just some confirming with the new, the pictures on the. I'm just looking at the paper. Yeah, I think those. So the new gate is 6 feet tall, and then the first section of the fence is 6 feet tall, and then it jumps up.
Correct.
Is that okay?
Correct. Not really visible from the street at all.
All right, thank you.
any other questions? All right, with that, we're going to open it up to the public. We'll give you an opportunity to come back after that. So if anybody is here from the public that would like to speak, please come forward. If you could speak, yeah, come on forward. Actually, if you could go back. Oh, yeah. Were you going to speak also?
Is she public?
What's that? No. You would be part of the applicant.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but do you have there's plenty of time left on.
So I am agreeing and reiterating, things my husband said. And I just want to add a couple of things. And when we're talking about special circumstance, and privacy is part of that. Part of what he mentioned is there are a lot of fences, in the neighborhood that are over 6 feet tall. And there are a number of trellises that add additional feet to that, or very high hedges. So clearly there is a privacy issue, that people don't want to be looking into each other's homes. And in our case, especially bathrooms and bedrooms are what's on the other side of the fence. What else was I? Also, as far as on the resolution document, under the site plan and architectural review, there are 12 criteria. The first 11 are not issues. They are either not applicable or the offense passed all of those. Things like site plan adequacy, site layout in relation to adjoining sites, neighborhood character, all this. It passed all this. The only thing that it did not pass was the conformance with zoning requirements. And we are aware of that. But again, it does start at 6 feet and is not visible from the front. And if we had to shorten it, it would not be easy because of the slope in it. I'm not even sure how we would do that because we don't want to lower the 6 foot portion, at all. So anyway, with that conform, so we are requesting a variance because we think it's a good fence, and for a lot of reasons we've stated, we're hoping to be able to keep that.
Thank you. All right, now we'll open it up to the public. If you could come up, state your name and then your address, please. And we ask that everyone keep their comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Joni Cahill. I live at 121 Leland Way, right next door to 127 Leland Way. My husband and I purchased our house 30 years ago this Saturday. So we have been in the neighborhood. I remember when we moved in, we felt like we were young people moving into the neighborhood with all the old timers. And now we're there. We have worked hard over the years to make a lot of improvements and maintain our home these last 30 years. In 1999, we added a laundry, bath, and bedroom addition to the side of the house that's in question. And the addition sits on a 6-inch slab higher than the rest of the house, ensuring that we were above grade. Because of the additional height, it is easy for someone over 6 feet to see directly into our bathroom if the fence were 6 feet. However, this was not really noticeable when we had the ivy hedge because that was that grew up over the roof line. In 2020, we cut back and removed most of the 12, 14-foot ivy hedge covering the original fence. The fence was falling apart and it was pretty much held up by the ivy, which also was every year got diseases like black rot, I think it's called. And there were quite a few rats that I could hear at night. So they didn't come out in the day, but when we did that, we replaced the fence, and which allowed us the privacy we wanted, as well as being much cleaner and more pleasantly aesthetic. And if you look back at, it was attachment 3, page 3, shows the ivy and the hedge height. We feel the height of the existing fence is within reason and appropriate, and ask that design review approve the variance for the fence at 127 Leland Way. As the immediate neighbor to this property, we will be negatively impacted by any changes to our fence, particularly to our privacy. As Judy and Jeff both noted, additionally, throughout the neighborhood, there are many fences that exceed the allowed height of 6 feet, depending on the properties, some even exceeding 8 feet. And we feel this fence should fall within the guidelines for approving the variance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the Zoom call. If you're on the Zoom call, please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to speak about 127 Leland Way.
Chair Chong, there's no public comment.
All right, thank you. With that, we will bring it back to the applicant as an opportunity. You have 5 additional minutes if you'd like to say anything.
Can I just show one more?
Yeah, if you just.
It was there, but I just want to point it out maybe a little bit. The photo that shows the view from our house. I should have pointed it out. I think it's one of the last ones. Yeah, there was one more page, I think. No, is that it?
This is one.
Oh, okay, there was one more photo. I don't know why it's not. I don't know, it's not showing it, but it just clearly shows how what we're looking at with, I mean, you can see the house is very close and it. Oh. Can I just bring this up to you?
Yep, please.
There's also a nice photo. So in that photo there, you can see what we're seeing. And how close the house is. And they have to listen to the piano too.
All right,
That's,
any,
point that out.
all right, thanks. Any final questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do. Do you happen to know your finished floor height and your neighbors?
Finished floor
Floor
height?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I'm not sure what that refers to.
Like where-
Over the grade of the house?
yeah, and versus your neighbors, like where if you both were standing in your houses, what that elevation change would be?
I honestly don't know. I think our house is not much above grade.
Okay.
I'd say, but I couldn't give you an exact.
Okay,
I know when you walk into the front door, you step in, it's maybe 4 or 5 inches.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right, thank you. So with that, we will close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the board.
I have some questions for staff. Are there any other properties in the neighborhood with variances granted for 6 foot, above 6 feet fences?
Thank you for that question. I don't know off the top of my head if there's any variances. However, based off of this particular neighborhood and its flat nature, I don't believe that there are any variances granted for fence height in this neighborhood.
So if I may,
Yeah.
Board Member Rosner, as much as that's a very important question related to, is this something different? You know, I think that's where you're hitting at. We look at each case separately. So we don't go and look at, are there other illegal fences? Because I am sure there are. And normally how we end up with these before us is either through the way these people had with an RBR, or somebody reports them. We don't go out and look for them. So I would imagine there probably are other fences above 6 feet because of the nature of it being a very flat area.
Yeah, I guess my question was, have there been any variances granted? I understand there's probably a lot of fences that were built.
And I would once again answer it in the same fashion. I would look at each variance as its own case because I have to make the findings related to that circumstance and not based on whether somebody else did it. The problem then comes into fact, one of the things that we want to make sure is that when we are faced with this, that we're making the findings and that we consistently make the findings for each case we looked at based on the same set of state standards. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if there are any other variances because we wouldn't consider this as part of this decision, but we would consider this decision on its own merit.
I would also like to quickly add that to my knowledge, all of the fence height variances that have been processed have mostly been along Tiburon Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
Question, I apologize if I missed it. What was the date the fence was built? And then was the build part of either building permit or previous application?
To my knowledge, it was built in 2020 without a permit.
2020 without a permit, okay. All right, any other questions for staff? All right, anybody want to lead us off?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this one's a bit of I feel like a lose-lose in that, well, first, I do want to say that the staff report was excellent, and I think really outlined what we as a board what they had to do as a staff to approve a variance or recommend a variance, what we have to do as a board to approve the variance. And, you know, on the one hand, you have two neighbors that are happy with the fence height, but I'm struggling a little bit because we need to create objective outcomes through a somewhat subjective process, and we have to make those objective outcomes can we make the findings? And we had the applicant admit that it was a self-imposed hardship. So I'd be interested if other board members can make the findings that this is not a special circumstance, given it appears that, you know, it'd be one thing if one of the houses was, you know, built within the setback, but it's not. They're both within the required setbacks of the neighborhood, like the staff report outlines. It's a flat neighborhood with, you know, it's one of those things. If in that neighborhood everyone wants taller fences, then the code has to be updated. We have to interpret the code as objectively as possible, and I'm agreeing with the staff report that it doesn't appear to be a special circumstance. So I think that's where my initial feedback would be, but open to a discussion around it.
Okay.
I'd like to give a little background. I've been an architect in this community a long time. Last count, I think we have remodeled 19 of the homes in this community, in this subdivision. The biggest issue in the subdivision is no second stories. So where the zoning would allow a second story in that zoning, everybody in the neighborhood is ganged together and the town has enforced the fact that you can't put a second story addition in this neighborhood. That then means that the houses are getting built out typically in an H shape or something like it, like one of these homes. And in so doing, they cover the lot line to lot line. And the privacy issue is created by the zoning issue. In that, you know, if you had a second story, people would sort of all say, okay, privacy's gone, 6-foot fence is maximum, so forth. But here, the fence provides the privacy in almost every case in this neighborhood. And the typical zoning change or typical thing that or a fence that I'm familiar with when people want a higher than 6-foot fence is they request a 6-foot fence with a 2-foot lattice work on top of it, and then they plant like crazy and it becomes a solid wall. This isn't nearly as big as a solid wall of a planted fence, but I look at it and I say, okay, I can make the findings based on privacy alone. It's one of those things that comes with the territory, with that neighborhood. And I don't think, since both parties are accepting it, it doesn't affect a third party or a fourth party or anybody from the street. You don't see it from the street. It's not damaging to anybody visually or in any other way. I could make the findings for it.
But do you worry that if we know there's a million houses in that neighborhood that probably have non-conforming, unpermitted fences that are above, above 6 feet, the precedent that it sets that everyone's just gonna say, well, it's now not a special circumstance because we've allowed this a special circumstance.
I think you'll have to take it piece by piece and event by event and case by case. The staff is already doing that, and I agree with them on that. I think I find that there's just no issue here that makes it offensive to anybody else, and that's the real purpose of the code, of that particular code, the 6-foot fence. I mean, we have 8-foot fences in some places. When you step a fence, it becomes even more of a problem. But I don't have a problem with this fence at all. Mostly because it doesn't affect anybody. And if somebody across the street wants to do it, well, they're going to be in the same pickle that these people are in. They'll have to come in and fight us for it.
I'm sure discussion will go on, but let's hear from everybody. What's your thoughts?
Sure. I would say some of the same issues, but coming in, I was noted that it really does not interfere with public view. It's really between the two neighbors. It's been established. I am bothered that it was built without a permit. And that's a whole nother discussion, another topic, I think. And I agree. I think the privacy issues are very important and they're agreed upon, and it's not, I like to say, interfering with public view or like we've dealt with recently. And I guess I would not oppose it.
All right. So, yeah, I always struggle with these because it starts with you can't avoid looking at an as-built application. It's like this thing's already built, right? That aside from what we have to look at from the findings, it's hard to look at something just as a homeowner being are we really saying that this person's gonna have to tear down part of their fence, right? Unfortunately, that's not what our job is here, right? Our job is to make findings on a variance, which is, 4 things that the state of California requires us to be able to clearly articulate that we can make those findings. So I guess where I kind of go to is if, let's say this entire house was being redone, or any house in this neighborhood, right? With similar circumstances as far as proximity to another home, size of lot, flatness of the lot. And they came in with an application that required, whatever it is, maybe a setback variance, something like that. But also thrown in there was a fence variance for someone that wanted to build a 6-foot, 9.5-inch fence. I know definitively, I don't want to say I know definitively, but I feel pretty strongly the board would be no, you don't get to build a 6-foot, over 6.5-foot fence. We would say, I can't make the findings for that, come back as a continuance, redesign the fence so that it brings it within the height limits. That isn't to say that we haven't approved plenty of, fence variances. It's usually Tiburon Boulevard because of light and windows. It's Trestle Glen, there was one with a large downslope where you had to come up almost 12 feet just to be at like eye level with someone walking down the sidewalk. But I do feel that if this was part of an application, that we would say, you know, no, at least I couldn't make the findings.
If the application were added to the fact that it's a privacy issue that we want that an extra 9 inches, I think you might change your mind.
Yeah, but I think it would also, like, we've seen that though, like for new applications, and it's like, well, maybe you should, you know, go with clear story windows. Maybe, you know, we kind of design around that. So then take it a step further. Let's say we approve a 6-foot fence after they bring it down, and then they build the house, redo the entire remodel, and then decide to go rogue and without a building permit approval, build a 7-foot fence anyway. Like, then we kind of be like, well, wait a second, this is what we approved or whatever. So I kind of feel like in this circumstances, it's like, again, I feel awful that the owners inherited this problem, but I also don't feel that this isn't like the hardest findings for me all these times is usually the number 3, the self-created hardship. And like the applicant basically admitted to us that, yes, this is, you know, a self-created hardship, which like makes it very difficult for me to.
It's not quite the same thing. He didn't build it. It's contingent liability that he bought.
Understood, but nevertheless, it's a condition that the applicant is applying for a fence that they own that was part of that. So I guess, as I'm probably more on, I think Alex's, kind of where his head is, despite the fact that it, like, the thought of, yeah.
And maybe I would never disagree with staff, but where I'm a little confused about the you know, viewing this in isolation, it confused me a little bit because I agree that we evaluate this as an independent project, but whenever we look at variances, we often get a list of other projects that have variances because it gives us the data that this is not a special privilege. That's kind of where I was going with that conversation is.
I can add at least 2 other options then. In this neighborhood, there are farther up the hill a little bit, the platforms are for each house are 1 foot to 2 feet higher as you go up the hill. And the fence line, typically the property line, is on the top of that 2 foot slope. So the ground comes along, goes up at a slope, and here's the upper level, and here's the property line. So the fence has been put on the top level, which means it's an 8-foot fence for the guy on one side, but it's a 6-foot fence for the guy on the other side. And we've always given that variance.
Right, but I think that's a different circumstance.
It is,
Yes,
it is,
yeah.
but it has similar overtones.
But I wouldn't be opposed to continuing the application to see if they come in with the data that shows us that there's special circumstances because one finished floor height is, you know, 3 feet taller than the other. But if it's not going to be, then I mean, yeah.
thing, yeah.
So we've had conversations about this projects in this neighborhood where some applicants want a higher fence and neighbors say, I don't want to look at a wall. And, you know, the circumstances aren't any different. You know, there's no validity one way or another is where I struggle. And hence why I said it's a lose-lose, because, you know, I do empathize with inheriting, you know, an as-built fence that, you know, is there and looks nice. But we have to remember it's, you know, we have a responsibility to, you know, deliberate around the findings and make those findings.
So I guess in the spirit of trying to move things along, because we are a 2-2 board tonight, it sounds like, are you still kind of in the same place as your original comments?
I believe so. I'm not sure. I believe so. I think there's a little bit of common sense that this is one that doesn't need to be aggressively defeated.
And I just think that for 8 inches to have to spend a couple of $1,000s doesn't make sense. And some, both parties are in agreement on it.
Yeah, I guess that's one of those things where like I struggle with that more than anything else. Yeah, but I think that our job isn't to make the determination of like what makes sense. It's to make the findings. Like, I mean, it's state law that says that that's what we're supposed to do. But knowing that we're, I guess, probably split on this one. And Alex suggested maybe there's a continuance, that there's additional data point that we should consider, and come back to a full board that would be able to, unless staff, there's something else that we can do in a 2-2 situation here.
No, if you have a 2-2 vote, then the appeal definitely fails. So
Or
Oh,
we
is this
could,
an appeal?
we could suggest a continuance.
This is.
not-
oh, it's just a
this-
variance. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of another one. Okay. I am sorry. So, but it would still be a 2-2 is still a vote of not approving this design.
Question back to there's no special circumstance in your minds of that situation? Because I think to me, that's kind of my,
But I guess,
tipping point.
even if there was, even if I was able to get my head around the other two, I mean, there's four findings and you gotta make all 4 of them.
Yeah.
Is the thing, like, if you can't make one of them, then the variance doesn't pass.
Well, the only one it doesn't make is conforms to the zoning.
No, the variance findings.
The
So,
variance
but
findings.
just, I guess just to say, point of order, so like a 2-2 fails, but like, we have continuance option, we have a approve or deny, which means that like approve or deny motion would probably not pass on a 2-2, right? Which means that we would put a motion forward for continuance. Yeah,
I just want to understand what board member Rosner is asking us to bring back as part of any continuance to make sure that we get you the data that you would like to see.
Well, part of it's, from the applicant and the neighbor of just like, what are the special circumstances that, what's the data that shows this is special circumstances compared to the rest of the neighborhood? I think that's one thing from the applicant side. From staff side, I think just understanding if variances have been granted for 6-foot fences.
Within that neighborhood is what
Within
you're
that
asking.
all right,
I would say that's a reasonable.
yeah, and then come back with the full board where we won't have to worry about, Suzanne will be the tiebreaker.
Come back.
Or additional
Come back with
data.
information
Yeah.
that shows special circumstances, including.
Yeah.
All right.
Including variances and or existing conditions that are 8 feet or
Yeah.
over 6 feet.
Yeah.
be nice.
I would
All right, so
continue it to the 15th if you
the
could.
15th, yep.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, apologies to applicant for coming back on a continuance on offense, but maybe a motion if we could for the August 15th meeting.
Is that a motion?
What's that? I move to continue this application to the August 15th design review board meeting.
Second.
Is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, with that, we move along to the last item on this evening's agenda, which is 2246 Mar East Street. If the,
Chair,
yes.
I think that, do the applicants are not going to be in town?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so then we can just renotice it for when you're going to be back in town. Okay? So you can tell Savannah when you will be in town and we can renotice it for that particular time. It's not, it'll be 2 weeks from that. There's the next one and 2 weeks from that is the next one after that. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 2246 Mar East. Again, the applicant has 20 minutes to present. We'll open up to the public and then they'll have an additional 5 minutes.
Right. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm presenting 2246 Maurice Street, the Kyle residence. I'm sure you all visited. It's an extremely special lot. We have a beautiful outcropping of rocks that created a very intriguing harbor type situation on the right-hand side, and somewhat of a decrepit but beautiful courtyard on the left. Basically, the house, somewhat similar to about 6 or 7 on Maurice, needs a lot of care. Underneath, there's some issues, and so it needed a fair amount of structural rehabilitation. Slide 2 is the site plan, and basically the project, we're adding 415 square feet of habitable space, a parking area, a 1-car garage, a hot tub, and basically a major refurbishing of the existing residence. We're also adding an ADU, which is important. We're going to build them at the exactly same time, so there'll always be 2 units at this lot. So it's an ADU plus the single family dwelling, which was approved by the planning director. Basically, this is showing kind of the methodology that we tend to use on Maurice, as the water side moving out is really unacceptable to the neighbors. So we tend to, or we add most of the square footage to the land side. So again, if you see the green, that's the added square feet on the lower floor. The red is removed. So we took a little bit of the middle punch out and created just a family residence. Very exciting. This is the top level. So basically this is where most of the new square footage is, and you can kind of see the L version. Most of it's in the back, and we have what we call the connector piece between the ADU and it's in the couple bedrooms. So again, it's a 415 square foot addition. And here we go. Maurice, as you know, is a unique animal. So we'll just kind of go over the issues. The lot coverage at 2246 is 63.6%. The average of all the lots that you see in the red and we're in the orange is 64.5%. Floor area, we have 2,952 square feet. The average is 2,915. But when you go to over allowable, because our dry land, when you walk through it, you can kind of sense it, it's larger than average. The average overage square footage is 1,685 square feet, and we're asking for 1,477. So again, we're trying to keep it in context of the neighborhood. So the next photo is what kind of, I think, most old Tiburon, and I think the word I've been using a lot is eclectic. There's a little bit of everything. We got modern, we got not modern, we got some of the older residents. So we're kind of doing more like a California bungalow type house at our proposed residence. The next is the elevations. So as you can see relatively clearly is we have the existing residence that we're basically renovating. Front doors where the front door is, the roof of the slope is staying exactly the same. Then we have what we've termed in our office the connector piece. And one thing to kind of know about that is the connector piece is 8 feet 6 below the existing ridge. So we went down basically 8 feet 6 inches from what the existing height is. And then we went 5 feet 5.5 inches for the 1-car garage. So basically, we have the dominant existing residence, and we just used, what can fit basically for the next pieces. And as we go around, as you can basically see, there's not much getting done on the west elevation. The one thing is we're making in the middle of the house 1 gable taller, just at the bedroom area. And then the major change is just kind of creating more glass for the view of the most beautiful bay. And that would probably be the biggest change that we've done. And then we go around the corner. And we add the ADU, which is there, the one-car garage with no windows to the neighbor. And again, it's the predominant is the existing residence. The section kind of shows the theory that I've been talking about. The green shows the additional square feet, and that's in the rear of the site. And if you look at the section, you can see exactly kind of the theory we were using, the kind of somewhat sizable existing residence, the connector piece going to the ADU, not going to, but aside of the ADU. And then the low garage, which has a plate height of 8'6". So again, it's kind of redoing the existing and adding these kind of contextual pieces, as we would say. And well, it's much clearer on the right-hand side. So our material is basically 8-inch horizontal wood boards, driveway pavers, limestone, and thermal ash, which is environmentally far superior than Palope. You're going to see a lot more of that used in siding and flooring in the future, and then black windows and glass railings. This is basically just showing the landscape plan. We're getting rid of one large tree to have the driveway to go in the garage, and we're putting it farther down to create more of a little screening between the two neighbors. And we're going to bring up somewhat of a contextual problem. We're actually just replacing at that right. Whoops, go back one. Right here, there's an existing 8-foot fence that both neighbors want to keep, and I now understand we perhaps will have a discussion. I did say perhaps. So we'll kind of go down to the next one. And this is kind of, again, the intriguing issue about this project is the property line's right here. So we couldn't touch it. So basically, we kept everything towards the front to keep it away from the side, to keep everybody views. And I think with this methodology, as you can see, both neighbors we've spent a lot of time working with them. Both wrote letters, and as you can see, there's usually in projects like this, there's a lot of issues. And I think this has been taking a long time. This project's been going on for over 18 months to work with everybody. A lot of resolution went on. And this is just the final pictures, the beautiful rock, the existing decked out to the rock, the house, and the entry. And that's it for now.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have 2 questions. I was trying to find, what is the width of the structure on the street? Is it like, I thought I saw it was like 60 feet, or how wide is
The existing structure?
the proposed? I think it was in one of these, it's
The whole thing.
excluding
Excluding the ADU? Obviously.
including the garage, but yeah, excluding the ADU.
We got to go to a floor plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On AA 1.11.
We're getting there.
That's the demo.
No, we got it. It goes here. We go. It's right here.
Well, 3, and then this is 9.6, I believe, or 10. So it's about 22, 3 wide.
No, I think, no.
That's what you're asking for?
I'm asking the entire structure.
Oh.
Oh, so it's,
Jeez.
we actually don't have that measured out.
Is it, On AA 1.11, is it 63 and 8 inches plus 5'7" roughly?
So that would be 68 feet, 69 feet,
Okay.
1 inches, plus or minus.
Um. Or is that on a lower level? With it, with 80? Okay. I got it. And then,
It's 10 feet off of the one property line where 8 is specified, and it's 8 feet off the
okay,
setback on one side and more than the setback.
and then, the tree removal, I think there's 2 trees right now that are like kind of in front of the proposed garage. The one you're removing and the neighbors that's staying?
Right, exactly. We're moving the one that's on our property.
Okay.
Yeah. We have no, yeah. We also have to get the stairs down to the ADU, so
Okay,
there was, with the 10-foot diameter to make it live, that was a impossibility.
Any questions? Yeah.
How high is that fence next to the garage? The one that
Oh, that's 6 feet.
the screen fence?
That
with the
actually
trellis on
is
top of it?
exactly what you were talking about. It's 4 feet and then 2 feet of screening,
So it's 6 feet.
6 feet. Oh, no, we're not adding, no,
You're not adding 8 feet?
no. I learned our lesson.
That seems to be a long, narrow place. Oh, I see. The stair starts right there at the
Yeah, you
street.
have no choice to get down, yeah.
Okay.
Site's pretty typical Mar East. It's very vertical. And then they, over the years, added the courtyard, which they were lucky to do.
And is there a reason why that couldn't be a 4-foot fence? Without the
No,
trellis?
there's no reason at all. We're just kind of,
There's one of the issues we've spoken about reasonably recently is trying to maintain visibility of the views
right. No,
from the street.
we're more than amiable to switch that to 4 feet.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
well, we should ask about the existing fence. I tried to see it, but maybe I just missed it. The 8-foot fence, what's their existing that you're suggesting replace it with an 8-foot fence?
We'd have to go back. It's basically right at the water side on the west side. It was full of ivy and it's barely held up and it's leaning between the 2 properties.
Okay,
And we don't want to, yeah.
and there's
Yeah, the neighbors, again, you had similar situation as before, but the neighbor specifically asked to keep it just.
there's a big elevation change in where.
No, it's not an elevator. It's a little more complicated. We have that flat, beautiful courtyard area. They just don't want to look down at the people in the courtyard from that side room.
Okay.
So it was literally just a visual so people don't stare. They used to have, again, I'm saying the same story that you guys heard before. They had ivy, rats, the usual beautiful things. And when the ivy came down, it's still standing, but that's what they did it for.
Okay.
Questions?
This house is very articulated in almost every elevation. And then you have this almost featureless elevation to the west.
That was
Was that at the request of the neighbors so that you can look in
100%,
there,
yes.
look in their windows?
the one we had, this was kind of a.
Didn't we bring this up before in one of your other projects?
Yes, we sure did. But what happened is they didn't want to see from that one room. That's how we pulled everything back so they could see the ocean,
Yeah, that
beautifully,
complete view. Yeah.
but they didn't want us to look at them. And so we have that extremely beautiful west side.
Well, you may get some comments on it.
One last, but the existing roof is the only part of the roof that goes above 30 feet. correct?
Exactly.
And there's
yes.
nothing new that does that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's, that was, again, we knew we're kind of creating all this space and we did not want to ask for a variance. Oh, the minor thing, I think we were discussing, there were working with 2.5 cubic yards, and I know the report came out at 50. That was just because we had it in square feet and it was just a misunderstanding.
Anyone else? Nope. All right, we will open it up to the public, and bring it back in a second, potentially. If anybody is here from the public to speak about the project, please come forward. All right, and then also if we could go to the Zoom call, if there's anybody on the call that wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen and we'll let you into the room.
Chair Chong, there's no public comment.
Okay, and you've got 5 additional minutes if you'd like.
I think I'm not going to say anything more at this juncture.
All right. Final opportunity for questions before we close it and bring it back to the board. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Would anybody like to lead us off? Fire away.
First off, I think it's a sensitive remodeling addition. It keeps the general character of the house nicely. I like the modern effect on the back of it a lot. I think it's going to be a very handsome thing. I can barely see the elevations of the ADU, but I see they're there. So it'll be more glass in the same general look as the rest of the house. As I mentioned before, one of the things that we're concerned about is being able to keep peekaboo views of the ocean, even with all of the massive overbuilding that's happening on every street in Tiburon, it seems. And I would say in one area that I would definitely like to see that fence that masks the stair on the west end of the building drop to 4 feet or so with no screening on top so that it can be seen by people walking or driving by. There never seems to be a lack of people walking and driving by there. So it is an issue, and it's harder and harder to get these peekaboo views and keep them, but you can do it there. And the second thing I'd like to encourage you to do is use some of that architectural magic and change the scale of the western elevation from being just flat planar stuff to some articulated elements. Doesn't have to be windows, doesn't have to be doors, has to be something that will make that area interesting to look at instead of just a planar wall. Other than that, I heard glass railings, and I guess that means you're using glass railings just deck to rail height all the way around in some kind of.
Right, Jim, since we close to the public, if we ask them a question or something like that, we'd have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'd have to open it back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we close the public.
I understand what you said. That's my mistake. Okay. I read the plans. It's not.
You know, I really don't have any other comments or questions.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Jim. It's a beautiful house. I was concerned quite a bit about just creating, with that garage and just, we look quite hypocritical given last meetings discussion around preserving views for the public and peekaboo views, especially with that tree that's the neighbors is still present, and that really blocks all the view once you add that garage. But I think Jim came up with a solution, which is increasing the view on the western side. Getting rid of, I'm assuming that tree is leaving
Yes.
and
So
reducing
we're gonna
that.
gain that view, that's a new view.
Yeah,
I can't,
yeah,
yeah, it's a new view.
so,
Send you back to the audience.
I think that's it nets out. Glad Jim raised it, so. Kind of close.
The other thing you couldn't ask for is, to open that garage to a carport.
That's where I originally was thinking of, you
Mhm.
know, having to have that discussion, but I think we've accomplished it. If that we're just moving the view over. And if we think that width is wide enough with the new view, given the lower, the removed screening and the lower railing, the lower fence, then I think we accomplished the goal. So I wouldn't then push for a carport.
Yeah. So my comments, first of all, I think it's a beautiful design. I like how, you know, I visited a property yesterday and it seems like it's pretty broken up. That the front, the curb is pretty broken up with what feels like a lot of different, you know, some landscaping and fences and these type of things. So I like how it ties everything back together as like as one single family dwelling. Don't have a ton of comments on much, you know, I'm not too concerned about the view because I feel like that this street has so much elevation change that you're often walking on the street itself, seeing over the tops of houses or around the corners from houses.
Not that stretch, but
Understood, but Mar East in general. So yeah, as far as the findings, I agree with staff's conclusion on the lot coverage and fence findings for those variances, and also agree with the findings for the FAR based on essentially all those lots along there and how they were originally divided up.
I think it's important to note that because the property and the neighboring property are on a slope, and you have different vantage points on that slope, we can make the findings for the special circumstances for the fence height variance.
So then I guess the question is just, I think Jim brought up the west elevation. And I guess without being specific, like I'd hate to continue it to like add a door, like, is there something that's first of all, did anybody else have those same concerns on the west elevation? Jim?
No, I think I would, in this case, since we've gone through this drill before, I think we could trust the architects and staff to come up with a reasonable solution to that western elevation. It's not a hugely critical element.
Okay, yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that it's not something like we're looking to add a condition of approval, because I don't see it that way.
Don't see it that way
Yeah,
either.
okay, all right. All right, so with that, it sounds like we're in the same place. And we'd be looking for a motion.
The draft resolution.
We do have a draft resolution, so it'd be to approve the draft resolution as prepared by staff. And of course, the project being calculated.
Motion to approve the draft resolution by staff and categorically exempt from CEQA.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. With that, the application passes. And we move on to adjournment.
Sometimes you make it easy,
Right.
sometimes.
Wow, thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Sometimes.